Hey there, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. Today's special guest is Jeroen Corthout. Jeroen is the co-founder of SalesFlare, CRM which focuses on small businesses. Jeroen began his career in marketing, learning in short order that the corporate world just wasn't for him. He found it was suffocating, and he didn't like the feeling of being cornered in one small part of a much bigger machine. It was that spark that set him on his entrepreneurial journey. Here to share the ups and downs of that entrepreneurial experience, describe what it took to build a new software business in a very saturated field, how to employ differentiation and stand out in a crowd, and so much more. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Jeroen Corthout. Hey, Jeroen, how are you, man?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
So good. Thank you so much for joining us. And we were talking a little bit just before the show. You're calling in from Belgium. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, cool. Yeah, you may be one of our furthest away guests. So welcome from across the pond.
Yeah.
Thank you. What was the furthest away before that?
Our technical furthest was a kid in
the Philippines.
From Dubai. Oh, Philippines. Yeah, pretty far too.
Yeah.
So we had a guy call from Dubai, and unfortunately, his interview was of such poor quality because of the audio. We ended up just having to produce his interview as a written article because it just didn't come out at all. But yeah, that's right. We did have a guy from the Philippines also. Yeah. So
yeah, Dubai is also further, by the way.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm right.
So here, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background as far as work history, and how you got from high school to now?
Yeah, I think I'll start when I was 15, 16. It was sort of my first professional experience. I found the joy of building websites. First, it all started with these GeoCities websites. I don't know whether you're old enough. I guess so. GeoCities.com. You could make these really basic websites where you put some text here and then some little animation thingy, and then you could have this counter that counted how many people you had on the website. And we all had those like in our class, and we played around. And then I discovered that with Flash, you could make much nicer things. First, I dreamed about building my own website, but then I ended up making one for my mom. She's an architect. I would like lay out her projects there. And then I started making them for other people. And very quickly, I felt like, oh, wow, this is something I enjoy doing. And I'd love to start a business based on that one day, like have a web agency or something. Now, I was always raised, my dad is sort of engineer that used to lead research organizations to become an engineer. So I figured I'm going to do computer engineering. And I went to the open day, and computer engineering didn't really appeal, I must say. The people that I saw and what they were showing you felt very distant from things I enjoyed. I didn't really see the point of it. I always really like to work with people and create something for them, with them. And it seemed like they were sort of off in their own worlds, just creating stuff. I ended up studying electronic engineering combined with business management because I really liked like the business aspect of stuff. Then I went into biomedical engineering because I felt that I could make more impact there. Plus, there were all these interesting medical courses I could do. And then when I went applying for jobs, I got offered all these engineering jobs. But I never really felt like any of those really appealed to me, in the sense that I always saw myself like sitting behind this computer making stuff there, but never really talking to a customer or having that interaction. And at some point I was just giving up. I was really frustrated by that. And one of my friends lent me his credit card, and I applied for business school one night, and I got into business school. And that actually changed things a lot, because after that, I didn't end up in any engineering job. I went into marketing. And I did that because I believed that was the best way of learning how I could lead a business later myself. Because I figured that in marketing, I could take a product, put it in the market, work on that with customers. And I picked a job like that in pharmaceuticals, because I was like, I studied for all the healthcare stuff. It didn't turn out to be extremely interesting job. I was basically making brochures for a sales team, then training them on how to use them, and then creating a little website for patients or something, but nothing really extremely impactful. So I very quickly got bored of that, and actually decided that I was going to start my own company from there again. And actually, what I found is that when I was working there, many of my colleagues would come to me when they were building a website because nobody understood how that was done. So I thought, whoa, there's a big gap here. I could start a web agency for pharma companies because I understand both sides. Now, I talked to a guy just to ask him for advice, and it seemed that he was actually running a company that did this kind of stuff, but then went beyond that. It was a marketing consultancy helping pharma companies and life sciences companies in general to become digital, to make that step from being those purely sales companies where sales reps go sit in the waiting rooms of doctors and promote their stuff, to a more modern model where you use the internet and all this kind of stuff. I think that pharma companies had no idea how to do. They were totally not built to do that, and the people in the marketing roles were ex-sales people who didn't necessarily have all that digital experience. So I did that for 4 years. I was account manager in that company. I basically found customers. I listened to their problems. I created proposals. I created budgets. I sent it to them. They approved it. I would make sure things happened. I would lead the projects or have someone else lead it, do the measurement, the whole thing, which was an incredibly interesting experience. I learned a lot there. And it was from there that I also then went part-time, and I tried the one project after the other, different startup ideas I had. Most of them failed. And SalesFlare is actually the first reasonably successful one there, which I sort of stumbled into. My co-founder I met at the Founder Institute when that's an accelerator. When we were both working on our own ideas, two different things. And I lost contact with him for a bit. And one day he calls me and he says, well, Jeroen, I have this software company and we're going to Vegas. There's a big conference there, big IBM conference. And we still need a sales guy to help us sell the software. Do you want to join? And I said, sure. Sounds interesting, like a week in Vegas, and they paid everything. I mean, we're standing at a conference, but it was a lot of fun. But we were quite successful there. We actually got a whole lot of leads, and we really got excited about closing those deals. And I decided I was going to spend my time helping them do that. And it was while we were doing that, and we were trying to build a system for ourselves where these, I think about 130 leads or so we had from the conference, to get them from just being interested in our software to actually buying it and using it. We needed some system to properly follow them up and guide them through that process. And we found that none of the CRMs we tried really helped us, not because they weren't necessarily good software or weren't built for sales follow-up, but just that they always came with this expectation that for them to work, we would completely fill them out diligently with this huge amount of discipline. Like every single thing we did, we had to put in the CRM. Like you meet a new person at the company, they copy someone else in on the email. You say, oh, new person. You take them, you put the first name in the CRM, the last name in the CRM, then maybe have an email signature. You copy all the details from the email signature, then you email them back, you put that in the CRM, you have a call with them, you put that in the CRM, like all these small things. And we didn't manage to keep up with those expectations, which then always meant that the system we were using would collapse because a CRM is only useful if the data is actually in there and you're actually using it completely the way they expect you to use it. And it was along that way that we figured at some point, like, this isn't possible anymore. And we actually saw that most of the data input we were doing in the CRM was copying stuff over from other systems, and the data was already in another system and it was digitally available. So we figured, why don't we build a system that connects all these different systems, like your mailbox and your calendar and your phone, and like email and web tracking and company databases and social media. It connects to all these things. It pulls the information together, organizes it for you, offers it to you. You can curate it. And then based on that, basically the information is there. You don't need to manually input it. And you can do your follow-up in a much better way. That's the idea we started off with just a bit more than 7 years ago. And now we have over 2,000 companies actively using that system to follow up their sales and growing.
Wow.
That's great. Thank you for all that. Yeah, I mean, that was a really in-depth life sketch there. I think, but there's a number of things in there I wanted to call out. First of all, I love your GeoCities reference. That I haven't thought of that in a million years. And we must be sort of contemporary in age, because I too sort of grew up in that era where we were transitioning from no internet to having internet. And the way to get online was to at first learn some HTML and things like that. But then the GeoCities approach was sort of, I guess, a precursor to what you would think of as, Squarespace and these kinds of things. Now,
yeah, totally.
Back then we didn't have drag and drop and all that kind of stuff, but you could still sort of build something using their interface. And so I love that because, like I say, I hadn't thought of that in forever, but it's pretty amazing if you think of how far the internet has come since then. I remember even going in and hitting refresh a bunch of times to run up my hit counters. So that,
yeah, it did that, right? It was that dumb. It couldn't even detect that you were the same person.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. But it is interesting to talk about how far it's come.
And actually, a fun fact is like that was in around the year a bit before 2000, I think. In 2010, I had a project at that marketing consultancy company. We went to China. We were supposed to do like a full audit of the digital strategy of a major pharma company in China. And these guys, they still had this sort of pages with the counters at the bottom, like, and we would like, how many visitors do you have on the site? And they were like, it's in the counter at the bottom, We were like, that's impossible.
Yeah, who needs Google Analytics when you have the little, fun little animated ticky bar down at the bottom? The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, I mean, it was clear from your life story that, I mean, this idea of, I don't know, sort of a straight shooting, maybe it's a super Belgian, engineering experience where you just become an engineer because it's sort of a foregone conclusion and you do that. It's clear that you were always sort of testing the boundaries, you were trying to push yourself out a little bit and it wasn't for you to sort of ride this straight path. I wondered, was there anybody in your life? I mean, like you mentioned maybe doing some work for your mom. Like, I mean, do you come from an entrepreneurial background or do you, have mentors or people in your life that sort of, led you down that path or made you think it was okay to sort of be that way?
No, I don't think so, actually. My dad is this, you wouldn't want to hear this probably, but corporate engineering R&D kind of guy. He worked most of his life at Philips. He really hates sales. He would say like, oh, sales is just like some talking. My mom is maybe more entrepreneurial in the sense that she has her own architecture business right now, alone, but like solopreneur. But she creates stuff. Like she comes up with whether it's houses or she's done windmills in the past, or it's that sounds pretty Belgian to you probably, but it's actually Dutch. She used to work in a company that restored windmills in churches and all things, but now she does things like apartment blocks, and now she's making a center for autistic kids, I believe. She's probably the most entrepreneurial, but I was never really stimulated. I think it more came from my drive to build stuff for people. that I always enjoy to do, and it sort of naturally comes from there. Plus, I don't know, I remember also when I was younger, starting to buy phones in the UK and in Germany. And they would ship them to me, and then sometimes the case, like at that moment, you could replace the cases, and the case would be a bit broken. I would buy another one there and sort of refurbish it, sell it again, make a profit. I also really enjoy doing that, like making my own money. That's combined with building stuff, I think, is what drives me in entrepreneurship.
So I know you were born here in the U.S. I don't know how long you lived here, but I mean, as a person growing up, as a young person growing up in Belgium, I mean, is sort of the, I guess, entrepreneurial drive, is that something that's really common culturally there? Or, I mean, are you sort of, I guess, on the outer skirts or on the fringe of sort of what would be considered normal for a young Belgian person?
No, it's not normal. Well, lately, having a startup is really cool, but that's only over the last 5 to 6 years or so. We've seen this really booming. It wasn't before. I mean, we have a part in the country towards the west where there's a lot of entrepreneurship going on, but that's not really the usual Flemish spirit. It's more, we're more of a sort of conservative culture, let's say, not really looking for a ton of progress. Things are good the way they are. So, but it's changing.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. I like to dig into people's sort of, background a little bit and see if where that kind of stuff comes from.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the development process of SalesFlare. When you develop something like this, there's usually a lot of hiccups and problems along the way, and integrating with it, your email and calendar and all that other stuff has got to be kind of tough. Did you have a team working with you, or did you build it yourself, and how long did it take? And just tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I personally did not build anything. Well, I mean, small things here and there, but not the software. I am tightly involved with the product process, and I can tell you some about that. When it comes to building the initial software, the very first version took us, I think, 4 or 5 months before we had something that you could actually use. Not that anybody wanted to use it, but you could if you wanted to. I think the first version that somebody was actively using apart from me was 7 months in or so. And the first time that people paid us was 13, 14 months in. So more than a year.
Wow.
Before anybody said, oh, this is something we can pay for. The issue was there that, as a startup, it's good to make an MVP first, to make the smallest thing that is viable for someone to use it, and then maybe a minimum lovable product and then a minimum sellable product if you want. But for us as a CRM, that minimum product immediately becomes quite large, especially if we decided that we were going to make an automated one. So there's a lot of complexity that comes first before there's something you can use. There's this whole email integration, then there's a calendar integration. I think by the time these guys paid us, we had a calendar integration. We were thinking about a phone integration, and we pulled in company information, all this kind of stuff. So a lot of things coming together. Initially, we were very much disorganized, I must say, in this process. We would sort of come up with a design and then try to figure out the rest behind it. And my co-founder, Leven, and our first hire, Adri, they could manage that. That was fine. But as we started growing the team, it's not a possibility anymore. Also, it requires a whole lot of communication while you're doing it, so it's just not doable. You cannot collaborate like that with a slightly larger team. So our process nowadays really spans from I would say it starts with customers giving us feedback, us tracking that issue by issue. We try to define things and like, people want to do this, but this is the problem. This could be features. This could be potential improvements to existing features. This could be actually things that are broken. Categorize it like that. Then we start seeing what things come up most. Then we have a prioritization process, which I can explain if you want, but it's a lot of explanation. Some things come out. We plan those in. When it's small improvements or it's bugs, things that are broken, then in the meeting where we prioritize, we can immediately define a solution. But that's not the case for features, because features have many aspects. Then we scope those out first functionally, first defining what it should do, then what it should show to be able to do that, because software is always like an interface that does something. And then we actually come up with the actual interface. And then somebody, nowadays Adri, goes in and turns that into technical specifications from the functional ones into like how will the software sort of be made. And then it goes into a development process, which then in the end, when we put it live, with testing in between, I'm skipping a lot of steps, but we ask the customers again what they think about the feature or the improvement or the bug fix or whatever, so that we can then take that again and put it back in the process and improve further.
Yeah, I think I really like hearing you sort of break it down like this, because I think, when a lot of people look at just sort of, I guess, how commonplace, high level technology and software is nowadays, it feels like it just sort of happens with the snap of a finger, right? I mean, we can just go and use Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and it feels like nothing happened, right? I mean, it's really easy for the consumer. So I think it's very interesting to sort of hear about that background.
But that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. I mean, that means that the process is working, because I think more and more that's the end goal, not just in consumer software like Facebook and Twitter and whatever, but also in B2B software. We're expecting that the software is not something complex to navigate and we're spending a lot of time doing that. No, we are on a path and the software is helping us to do that. So we're really minimizing our time handling software and maximizing the time we're actually doing something useful. And actually the software should also, to a large extent, make sure that the time we spend actually working is minimized, because it's automating stuff. And that requires a whole lot of thinking, because you need to make a complex thing really, really easy. And that's not something you can do like that.
Yeah.
So that's why there's this whole process to be able to do that.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than jumping on and trying a new platform or a new, Photoshop type software or SketchUp or something like that. And it takes you a day just to learn how to use it. And then a day to figure out how to, plot what you're doing and this and that. And so something that you can just jump into and it naturally makes sense it's so much better. And from what I've seen on your website, your CRM looks like it's one of those.
We do our best, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny too, though. And I'm noticing this sort of generationally, just because I have a 14-year-old. We find that, they understand how to use the software that we find on our phones, but they don't understand anything about what goes into them, right? I mean, for example, my wife teaches in a junior high school here, and every year she has to do a course on saving your work, because everybody is so used to having stuff, saved to the cloud automatically and all this stuff, that nobody names files anymore. Nobody does anything anymore. So they just have a, Dropbox full of hundreds of files called untitled, and that kind of stuff. And, for people that are a little older who sort of grew up with computers, and if you didn't have some sort of organizational structure in your life, you would just never find documents again. Nowadays it gets very complex, because these kids are generating a lot of stuff without even really recognizing that they are generating things. They don't even understand there's a saved file backing up this thing somewhere. They just think of it, oh, well, it's just done. So, so I think it's kind of the gift and the curse of highly efficient software, right? Like, it's great because it simplifies our life. But I think there was something beautiful about sort of the time period that we all grew up in, where you had to sort of live a little bit through the struggle to understand that we've got it now.
Yeah, definitely. No, I understand what you mean, but a lot of these struggles that you're also defining now, they're going away. I mean, you could have everything untitled if there's a search engine and you type a word that you know is in the file and it shows up, then you don't even need the titles. But yeah, that's where software always makes it easier on you, and then the flip side is that people get lazier, and then the software even needs to get easier. So yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of a perpetual cycle. I wanted to talk a little bit too about just the money side of this business. So when you got started, I think if I heard the story right, you were sort of working part-time, and doing this on the side while you were developing this business, which sounds to me like probably not venture backed, probably, something you guys were doing on your own. And I sort of love this idea of sort of the bootstrappy software business. And so I wonder if you talk about that a little bit, just like how did you actually facilitate getting something done in those early days if you weren't backed by somebody?
Yeah, it actually went in phases. Initially, when we got the idea and stuff, I was working part-time on it. I was still doing the consulting job and earning money that way, and I think it's relatively healthy because it wasn't my first project. Many of them failed, and if I would have given up my job for the first one, I would have been in big troubles. And that's just generally, I think, if you're an entrepreneur, you start the first thing and immediately succeeds big time. That's good for you, I guess. But it's not the usual thing. Like most startups fail. So I definitely recommend not going too far, not taking too many risks, and maybe working on the idea you have in the evening, or if you can go part time at your job. It's a pretty safe way of experimenting. Then there came a moment that we were accepted in an accelerator, and the guys in the accelerator said that a requirement was that we went full time. Now that was a big step for us, but on the other hand, also we got 25K, and we thought 25K was a lot of money at that moment, which it obviously wasn't. We even hired Adri, who I mentioned earlier, like our first hire. We hired him when we got 25K because we figured like we have money, we can hire someone. That was rather dumb, but in the end we managed things, because we got accepted in another accelerator, which gave us 50K. And then we got money from the government. It was a subsidy for a feasibility study, which was 50K. And then we were actually part of an incubator, which was linked to a bank, and they wanted to tighten the relationships with the startups. So the first moment they launched, like, have a meeting with the bank manager. We did that. And we got a loan, which was pretty unusual for a very early stage startup, an investment credit for 100K. So at that moment, we had sort of raised 225K in total, which with a team of 3 in the beginning and then a bit later 4 brought us quite far. Because the thing is, if you start a software as a service business, if you focus on big companies, you could maybe like sell it to a few enterprises, then start building it, and then sort of finance it that way. But if you focus on small and medium-sized businesses like us, then you're working on mainly monthly subscriptions, and also annual ones. But you get your money along the way. But you first need to build the software, right? You only get paid as soon as things are there. So in the beginning, you're making a whole lot of investments, which then only over time start earning you money. And then when that goes well, then you earn a lot of money. But there's this big, big hole to go through where you're just burning money. And we started with this 225K, like I explained. At some point, we raised some angel money in the form of convertible loans. Then we got some more subsidies, some more angel money, some more subsidies, some bank loans along the way. And that's the way we financed it until like the revenue started really kicking in, and then we started paying back some of this stuff.
Yeah. So what do you think was the value of the incubator process, for example? I know there are a lot of startups that sort of go it alone, and there are a number that go through the accelerators. And I wonder, I mean, was it the fact that they made you break and go full time that was super beneficial, or was it the network that you created there? Like, what did you actually get out of the incubator experience that you thought was valuable?
Yeah, for the accelerators, those the one that made us go full time as an accelerator. What they did was they had this program where they made us go through different workshops to explain how we could best do this and that. Some of those workshops were good, others were not entirely helpful. I mean, for someone who had never seen a business, perhaps, but otherwise, pretty basic stuff. But sometimes it also put us, like it made us take a few steps back. And that part was helpful because then we said like, okay, it seems like we got a bit too far ahead of ourselves. Let's look at this again. Let's maybe start doing some customer reviews, understand things better, and then we can move ahead again. When it comes to the incubator, they had a lot of good stuff in many ways. But the main thing we got from it was the network. And I mean the network in the sense that the community, like we were part of a group of companies, lots of different startups in the same place, the same building, different floors, different whatever. But we were always there together. We knew each other very well. And we're all going through the same issues. So we could basically help each other out. Just somebody else had done it like that. We're like, oh, that's interesting. And then, we would tell them something. And then that exchange was invaluable to us because it made us skip so many discovery steps, let's say. Like, contrast that with before we got accepted in the incubator, we were working out of a little office in the middle of nowhere. We were just all alone and reading the internet.
Yeah.
Being able to be with others who go through the same thing it makes a huge difference.
So did you have to give up any portion of the business to get that initial funding, like the 25K or the angel investors that came in? If so, do you regret it, or do you think it was the right move?
It's at the moment you give parts of the business away. That's the moment when you need to judge it, not afterwards, I think, because then you're like, oh, I wish I didn't. But I don't regret much of it, no. We also didn't give much away either. That first incubator for the 25K, they bought the rights to put in 50K and then get a convertible loan, but that didn't happen. Then the other incubator got a percentage in the company, which they still need to convert. The angels also still need to convert, and the subsidies were basically grants. The loans are things you need to pay back, so you pay interests, and the interest rates are really, really low. So currently we have loans at 2% annual.
Wow.
So it's basically free money.
That's awesome.
So. Yeah, no, that's incredible. Well, I wonder, so how big is your team at this point?
We are 7.
There's 7. So can you talk a little bit about the hiring and acquisition of talent, especially as a bootstrap startup, like as you're starting to grow, like when do you know you need to hire for one versus maybe outsourcing or using, a third party of some variety? And then also, how do you go about finding these individuals, making sure that you're spending money wisely when money is, very tight?
Yeah, hiring versus outsourcing is for us. It's not just hiring versus outsourcing; it's also building it inside or buying it or whatever. This decision is always based on how core is this actually to our company and what we do. Do we need to have full control over this? How complex is it to do? And if we get it somewhere else, like what's the price? Those are the things that go into that decision. For us, the things that are core to running SalesFlare is one, building it. When you think about it from a hiring perspective, building it and to selling it. So for these two sides, we will hire people. If we need a design job done or so, most of that we can actually do with our product team. If we really need something designed, like designed, then we will get a designer externally. But it's not really core to what we do. I mean, the UI aspect, at least, the user experience, that's something else. What was the second part of your question?
Oh, well, that pretty much covered it. I was just looking at or curious about, making sure that you're hiring people, but I or when to hire and when to outsource or whatever. But I like the point that you make about making sure, sort of measuring everything against how core it is to the business versus, just, oh, well, we need a designer, let's go hire a designer. When in reality, as it's not core to your business, as you described, you could just bring on a designer to do the one task you need here and there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very important when you're starting off a business that you don't overspend. So you need to, I don't know how you say it exactly in English, like turn over every dime or something.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you get like a few $100K somewhere, it's very quickly spent if you don't think about it too long. So the same applies to hiring. Every time we think it through twice. That's financially, but then also when it comes to even more costly, I would say, is hiring the wrong person, irrespective of the salary.
Yeah.
Because it has such a big impact on your business. Like hiring the wrong person can damage your company culture, which can make you less efficient. It can just make that you are throwing money away because you're hiring somebody, that person is not really bringing value. Or you can even hire someone and you can go backwards because that person is not doing a good job and introducing more issues than they're actually fixing, you could say. And for that, we had to put a bunch of processes in place, simple things, to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's things like asking for referrals is very basic, but then if you do that, you need to ask a bit further to at least uncover the positives in the negatives in the positive recommendation they're trying to do. You can always find the negatives. Then we involve multiple people in the hiring decision. When we didn't used to do that, it was harder to actually judge a company culture fit. But if there's multiple people looking at it, that's way easier. And then third, trying to actually work together before hiring the person. There's multiple ways of doing that. For developers, we very often have these, for instance, like they join as a student during the summer to work on something. Or if that doesn't work, we ask them to build something and then we scope it with them and those kind of stuff. For marketing, it's slightly harder, but you can always find something you can work on together, like a landing page or whatever. And maybe a fourth thing, we also find writing and communication extremely important because it defines our efficiency so much. Like if you explain something in writing and the other person doesn't get it, does the wrong thing, or the discussion needs to go on for a long while before everybody understands it, that just slows us down massively. Because a lot of what we do nowadays is written. Like we're all in Slack, right? We write meeting notes, we write issues in GitHub, all these things. It's all written. We chat with customers, it's written. And if people can't communicate in a written way, then they're also not a good fit. And then maybe a last point, when to hire, is also something you asked. We've hired too early in the past. And with too early, I mean, sometimes we hired because we were not sure of ourselves and we were afraid of trying to do something. And that's wrong because before you hire someone for a job that you might not be able to do in a great way, it's good to at least have done it yourself, because then you understand the basics of how it should be done. Plus, you know what it entails. And then you can actually hire someone who's going to be great at doing that. And if you don't go through that pain yourself first, then it's very hard to, one, find the right person. Plus, then when you're trying to find out the approach, it's easy for you to iterate on an approach very quickly. But if there's someone in between, let's say, like if you need to get someone to iterate on an approach, that's much harder. And there's also not many people you'll find that are able to do that in a good way. So I would give the advice like wait a long time with hiring. Yeah. Might not be popular advice, but like think it through, do it yourself, and at some point when you feel like everything is breaking, then hire a person.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And I appreciate the time you took for a little extra detail on that, because I think, especially for a lot of, young startups, I think one of the things people most look forward to is hiring somebody, like, get somebody in here to do the work so that I don't have to. And, so I think there's a little bit of that. And then also, you hear all these stories of these big multi-million-dollar venture deals and stuff like that, where then they just run out and hire a team, and maybe aren't as thoughtful with the money as they ought to be. So I think it's important to outline that stuff.
Yeah, that's where if you hire a lot of venture money, then the people you raise it from will say spend it, because they cannot wait for you to raise the next round and up the valuation, and it all needs to go really fast for them. But I think you sort of have to go on the brakes a little there, because you need to make sure that everything still stays under control. Whether your company goes under or not is way less important to them than for you, because they're betting on 10 or more companies and you're betting on one. So
yeah, right. It makes sense. I was wondering if you could maybe break down deciding on the tech stack to go with. There's, React, and there's PHP, and there's all this different tech out there. When you started the project, how did you know which one to use and why?
Ooh, honestly, that's a very long time ago. And I don't remember the full details, but we decided to go with JavaScript.
Okay.
With, at the time, a relatively widely supported and modern stack, which was Node in the backend and Angular in the front end. The great advantage of going full JavaScript is that our developers find it very easy to develop a feature front to back. We don't need to have this sort of awkward collaboration where someone creates the client and the other person does the server, and then things don't fit on each other. One person can do it all. It's also way more interesting to them. They can do a bit of both, and they see the whole picture. They can debug the whole thing as well. It has a lot of advantages. Then we built everything on Google Cloud.
Okay.
There, the question what we were going to go for was, a hard one, because things were relatively similar. Why we chose Google Cloud and not Azure from Microsoft or AWS from Amazon is one, the interface of Google Cloud was way nicer. We had experience, for instance, with AWS, and it was always a mess. We just didn't understand what we were doing. And second, we believe that Google and us were going sort of the same direction. We're automating data and stuff with the end goal of then employing AI. And we thought that Google would do a lot around that. And it is the case in the end. And then third was a purely financial question. Like, we got some credits from Google, not as many as we would get from Azure, but then we would be on this Microsoft environment. So, but nowadays also Google Cloud, when you look at it, is actually cheaper than AWS. if you don't get the discounts. So that was a good choice as well, I think.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I love, we've spent a lot of time talking about the product and in development and all that kind of stuff and sort of building the company. I wonder if we could just take these last few minutes together and talk a little bit about now selling the product. So, I mean, obviously CRMs, I mean, they're everywhere. There are lots of options in that space. And you guys have done a pretty good job of trying to stand out against them. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about just sort of the SalesFlare product and, you know, what makes it unique versus, you know, maybe some of these other more well-known brands. And then, you know, how you actually went about selling it, you know, maybe how you found your, you know, first 100 people to sort of prove out your concept.
Yeah. If you would go on g2.com nowadays, which is the world's leading B2B software review site, you would find 650 plus CRMs. I don't know the exact amount today. If you then go to the rankings, we're in the top 20. Our spot always changes generally. But then if you look for easiest to use, we're around spot number 3 or 4 or so. If you would look, but it's not listed on the site like that, but there's like in their private environment, there's also reports on best ROI, best support, easiest to set up. In all of those that I just mentioned, we're number 1. I think in best support, we're maybe number 2. And that's because we focus on 2 things. One, ease of use, usability, and that means making it very easy for people to understand what they're doing, not showing too many things at once. You can do a lot of things, but it's not necessarily there at first sight because that can become very overwhelming. We also spend a lot of time on onboarding, as we call it in SaaS, which is like getting people on the software and getting them to use it and making sure they understand things, guiding them, you know, this kind of stuff. But then a lot of that ease of use is also it's labeled ease of use, but it's actually the automation we bring, the way that we make a lot of what's happening and a lot of the data, the way we're bringing that together, which is complex in the back end but looks easy on the front end, and is also saves you time. That's sort of also embedded in there, and that's the second thing we focus on a lot. That's the reason why we started the company. We saw that all the CRMs we tried didn't work for us because they came with these expectations that we would fill them out all the time, every single thing, and we just didn't think that was feasible, that was even realistic. So we built something that fixes CRM, which has a lot of advantages because it doesn't just mean that you have data in the CRM. The main reason why our customers use the software is because they want to follow up their sales leads and their customers better. That's like the essential use of it for the end user. But then from there, if actually end users like sales teams, if they actually use the software, there's also a lot of other things that come from there because, for instance, the sales manager can finally coach their team without having to do these awkward sales pipeline review meetings where they take them by the hand and say, what's happening here? What's happening here? You can have decent forecasts. You can work better together with marketing because the data about what sales is doing is actually there, and then you can match it with what marketing is doing and not sort of do the same things in parallel with the same people, like sending discounts to people that the sales team is trying to close. When somebody is sick, you can actually pick up as a team. When somebody leaves, you don't have to start building relationships from scratch again because you see all the things that happened. Now, all of these kind of things then also start working, and the whole sales side of a business is way easier to manage. But it all starts with the sales team using it. And for the sales team to use it, it's not just enough that you tell the sales team to use it and you give them software and say, use it now. There needs to be something in it for them. They need to be convinced that it's something that is going to bring them value. It needs to be easy. And there's a lot of things going into that, and that's what we focus on as a company.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So, well, we're kind of getting to that point in time right now. Can you tell people where they can find you and reach out if they have any questions? And it's salesforce.com, right? Yep. SalesFlare.com.
SalesFlare.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll edit that.
Salesforce is this really big unknown competitor.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to find out more about SalesFlare, that's salesflare.com. Flare is Flare. You can find out all about the software. We have a blog with lots of articles about sales and startups and marketing and all these kind of things. And you can also try the product, of course. It starts off for 7 days, but then I think I explained that you get extra days as you set it up. So you go to 30 days and more. And if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is probably the best place. There's only one person with my name, so you just type that into the search, if you can type it, and then send me a connection request with a personal message, because if you don't include a personal message, I get a ton of connection requests every day and a lot of spam, so I'll assume it's also spam. But if you include a personal message, I'll certainly connect with you and we can have a chat.
I like that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeroen.
Is it an actual app that you can download on your desktop, or is it all cloud-based and browser-based? I thought of that just right now.
Oh, there's a bunch of things. So there's the cloud-based thing in your browser. There's an email sidebar within your Gmail or your Outlook that shows the full CRM functionality within your inbox. There's an app on your mobile phone, whether it's iOS or Android, and same on tablets. Okay,
awesome.
Awesome, perfect. Well, thanks so much, Jeroen. I really appreciate your time. And we were talking a little briefly before we got on the show. Have an awesome extended weekend heading out to the sea.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so fun.
And thanks to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you all next time.